Welcome back, travelers, to Legendary Lore, where we are not going to be going over Wrath and Storm. As you can see, we are actually going to be talking about Ajani Goldmane. Yes, you see, Ajani is going to be showing up in Dominaria United, and we just wanted to cover some of his story before all the adventures that happened there happen. So, everybody knows that Ajani is actually one of my favorite characters, and if anything happened to him, I'd probably die of sadness.
We kill everyone in this room and then myself.
He's a precious cat boy, and you're about to find out why. So, basically, Sarkhan Vol is the... Yeah, Sarkhan Vol.
Go on.
Sarkhan Vol just finds this random cat guy freaking out in the middle of Jund. I know, you thought it was a slip-up, but it wasn't. This is actually how I'm starting this story. And he's like, what happened? And Ajani basically tells him how there's this huge story.
Why does Sarkhan sound like a good guy?
Well, because Sarkhan was just a dragon worshiper at this time. Like, he came from... At this point in time, Sarkhan had just come from Tarkir looking for dragons, and then he found Jund, which was full of dragons. And he was like, I'm home.
So he's not really a bad guy.
Sarkhan? No. He's a little... So, basically the deal about Ajani is that he's an albino lion. And he has a brother named Jazal. Jazal is the coolest cat there ever was. And really the thing about Jazal is that he's the leader of the entire pride.
DK crew.
Lad. So basically... basically what happens is that Jazal makes sure that Ajani isn't terribly mistreated. Ajani is seen as this weird albino lion man, and all the other
like most white guys down here.
And then all the other lion people kind of just see him as just someone to avoid. That said, he's very good at using soul magic. That's actually Ajani's main thing, is he uses magic of the soul. He can reach into you and pull out your deepest power. He's basically Super Kami Guru.
Yeah,
so,
man. Soul magic.
Well, yeah, so that's why in the actual original...
Just imagine Johnny driving around in a hippie van now. You want some soul magic, man?
Soul magic. In the original Alara set, you may recall that there was Soul's Majesty, Soul's Might, and I think Soul's Fury were the three cards. And they were all basically indicative of Ajani's ability to draw out...
Naya colors.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So... that was Ajani's whole deal. He also had an axe that was just like his brother's. His brother's had a black-headed axe.
Doesn't he have a two-sided axe?
Yeah! So one night, Ajani discovers that Jazal has been horribly murdered. And he's very sad about it. So sad that he's also angry. And this is the one time, sadly, that Ajani has had red in his color identity because he has become Vengeant. Ajani Vengeant is basically Ajani right when he meets Sarkhan Vol. And Ajani's struggling because he's always been white aligned, and now he's struggling with this red aspect of himself. And basically Sarkhan tells him, look, use your anger. It's good to be angry. Because, of course, Sarkhan is red-green to the max. In every single iteration, he has been at least mono-red. He's always had red, regardless. But in this one, he was like, he's just Sarkhan Vol. He's so awesome. And so he basically trains Ajani on how to be a planeswalker and how to channel his anger.
Mono green Sarkhan would be very weird.
It would be. It'd be really weird. It'd basically be Garuk. So basically, Sarkhan sees like Ajani in the state he's in. He decides to help him. And Sarkhan basically leaves at that point. After he helps him out with his deal, Ajani goes off on his quest for vengeance, and he basically becomes a detective. He finds out there was another member of his tribe that had messed things up, and they actually had their own car. They're that real big one. And basically just skipping past a lot of that, Ajani...
Where are they?
Yeah, basically, he just kind of beats his way through the food chain and finds out that there's something wrong with Alara, which he now realizes is 5 separate planes that originally were one.
Like shards of it.
Exactly. So he winds up on Bant now, because if you look at the way it's set up, green-based Naya, to the side you have the red-based Jund, on the other side you have the white-based Bant.
Okay.
So that's why those are the ones he's connected to most. And so Ajani winds up going between those 3 different planes, and he kind of gets a feel for like who he is as a person. And on Bant, he really gets an idea of like how he wants to handle things, how he wants to stop things. And eventually, over the course of the story, he meets Elspeth. Elspeth, of course, shows him a much more reasonable way of going about things, to more justice as opposed to vengeance. And Ajani gets to the Maelstrom. You see, at one point he tries to planeswalk back to Naya, and he realizes he can't because he's already on that plane. Now, this is a little different from a few days ago when we talked about Urza going back and forth. Planeswalkers are not particularly good at planeswalking from one part of one plane to another. That's a little too OP, unless they specifically have teleportation magic like Venser did. Did. And so basically...
Does Karn have that now?
You would think so. I don't know. But the thing is that Ajani winds up going to this, realizing that the planes are converging, and so he goes into the conflux, the little center, the maelstrom where it's happening, and he finds Nicol Bolas there, who's basically gorging himself on this black, blue, and red mana. And Ajani knows at this point that Nicol Bolas is the main villain of this story. And he's like, "You killed my brother. Prepare to die." And so basically, Ajani summons a ethereal green-white mana reflection of Nicol Bolas to defeat him. Which is really epic, considering the fact this was before Ugin was even recognized as an actual character. So I'd like to imagine Nicol Bolas' response to seeing an ethereal spirit dragon that looks a lot like him suddenly tossing him around would be very, very bruising to the ego. But that also means that Ajani, as a planeswalker, was one of the only ones to physically go head-to-head with Nicol Bolas and come out
and live.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You had the
Not
entire...
even just live. He beat him.
Exactly.
In this interaction.
We had the entire Gatewatch show up, and Bolas just did that to Gideon until he died.
You indestructible man.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's stop! So, it's a pretty big deal. That's Ajani's first foray into the storyline when we first got introduced to him.
So, we're already introduced to this hardcore character.
Yeah, and he has a double-bladed axe because he took his brother's half of the axe, and
then they establish that he's peaceful for the future, because we never see anything that epic from him again.
In addition, Ajani was given the opportunity to become the new leader of his tribe. They were like, because of what you did, because you saved us and everything, would you like to be our new leader? Especially since you've experienced the other planes that we're now a part of. It'd be good to have you. And he's like, you didn't want me before. There's others that can do this better than I can, and I'm needed elsewhere. Because he still wants to take down Bolas. Which, eventually, that does get to happen. But Ajani has a personal stake in doing that. And that's really cool, because that's kind of just sets up who Ajani is and how he is and the way he feels about things. And it's weird time-wise because he seems really young at this point. But then we have his original card where he looks really, really old in comparison to Ajani Goldmane.
Yeah.
So, where exactly he stands by that point, not entirely sure. But it's got to...
How old are you? Yes. What is your age? White mana. Who are you? Vengeance.
Vengeance. I'm vengeance. So Ajani basically afterwards just becomes a mentor of heroes. And he kind of just meets people, he takes care of them, and he guides them, especially planeswalkers. He loves two things in particular: meeting new people and helping people. And he particularly does that with other cat tribes. So he's been to places like Mirrodin, he's been to places like Theros. Basically anywhere that has lion people, he's gone there and he's helped them out. Which would explain why, as you guys may recall, in New Capenna, he knew about New Capenna, which has cat people. So he probably went there at some point and was like, hey, let me tell you how to be a better person. And they're like, you want a drink? And he's like, okay, I'll see you later.
It's like, we have two options here. You could drink with me or you could die.
Yeah. He puts the axe on the thing. I'm going to go now. So basically what winds up happening is that he looks for Elspeth and he finds her on Urborg. Technically on Dominaria, but he finds her in Urborg in a gladiator pit fighting people.
Yeah!
And he says hey, don't kill that guy you just knocked out. You need to come back. You need to figure things out. She refuses. She's doing her own thing. She's working through her own problems because remember, she just saw Bant get annihilated by all the evil forces. So Ajani's like, fine, I'm sorry, I'll leave you alone. So he goes off on his own again, doing his own thing. Obviously, this is around the time where Elspeth meets up with Venser and Koth, and she goes off on her journey to New Phyrexia. Mm-hmm. Ajani eventually meets back up with her when he runs into her on Theros. which is, of course, everybody knows, a great time for everyone, and nothing bad happens. At all.
Nah. Everybody's good. Nobody's a villain.
So, yeah, basically, Ajani doesn't want her to get hurt, and he wants to help her. So he helps her on her journey to serve the sun god. And he thinks, okay, well, what's
Oh, that sounds like a great guy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he's just very bright, very sunshiny.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sunshining that for me. So basically what happens is that he sees Elspeth defeat Xenagos. He's like, we did it! And then he sees Heliod skewer her with the spear. He's like, what did you do?
It's like, I thought we did it!
And so Ajani cradles her body as she slowly starts to die. And Heliod's like, hey, take her out of Nyx. If you don't, she'll never, like, she will disintegrate, essentially. Her soul will be obliterated. She needs to die in the mortal realm. And so Johnny's like, forget you. And he just kind of leaves with Elspeth's body. And
I'm doing it, but not because you said so.
Yeah, exactly. And so Elspeth dies. And Ajani is very upset about that. So he puts on her cloak. But instead of becoming vengeant like he would have in the past, he chooses instead to spread the good word.
And become steadfast.
Yeah, exactly. And so he steadfastly decides that he is going to show the world where their faith currently lies, which is, of course, in individuals like Heliod, who is not worthy of such praise and faith. He's not a true benevolent god.
He's going to take down the gods by lowering devotion.
Exactly.
Cool.
And so he goes around, starting, of course, with the lions, and he gets all of them like up in arms about it, and he just kind of starts that. And that then leads to Kaladesh. So obviously Ajani's upset that Elspeth is dead. And basically before he goes to Kaladesh, he goes to Kamigawa. The reason he went to Kamigawa is because that's where the story circle is. He's a part of the story circle.
Oh.
So he's friends with Tamio, who recently got Phyrexianized, and a few others like Dovin Bond. And so basically while he's there, he learns about Tezzeret. Not so much learns about Tezzeret, but learns about Tezzeret being on Kaladesh. And he knows that Tezzeret is not a good guy. Because Tezzeret was from Esper during the whole deal with Nicol Bolas.
That's where he got his arm.
Yeah, so he already knew that Tezzeret was a bad guy. And so basically, Johnny goes of his own accord to Kaladesh to try and see what he can do. He joins the Renegades and he starts fighting everything. While he's there, he discovers this really weird box that has 2 women inside of it.
Please elaborate.
Chandra and Nisa are trapped inside of a planeswalker-proof box. He smashes them out of it and saves their lives.
How did he smash through it if it was planeswalker proof?
It's only from the inside.
Just the inside, not the outside? It's pretty smart thinking there. It was an entire Fairly Odd Parents line.
I know. The fairy proof, yeah.
With the little bomb guy.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks. Love it. Fantastic. Let's go. So, basically, Ajani winds up joining up with Chandra and Nisa. They're like, okay, well, we were here because Dovin Bond said there was a problem with rebels. And he's like, well, I'm a rebel. And so they're like, we trust you.
You're a giant lion.
Yeah.
What reason would you have to like? You can just bite my head off.
I mean, he also could have just left them in there to suffocate and die. So, but yeah, turns out Ajani's actually best friends with Chandra's mom. Like, really good friends.
Does Chandra know her mom's alive?
Not until this point.
Okay.
Because he didn't know there was the daughter yet. He just saw a person and helped them. Because that's Ajani. And so the whole deal of Kaladesh happens. There's a whole like revolution and all the Ether Revolt happens and everybody's happy. And Ajani sees what these Gatewatch people are doing and says, I'm going to join you guys. And I have the quote right here. Until all have found their place, I keep watch. So obviously, again, Ajani being just this generally good Catman is really what sets him apart from every other character in the story. He's like just genuinely just
so
a
Nick
good
Fury
guy.
doesn't ask him to join the Avengers. He asks Nick Fury if he can join the Avengers.
Basically. Also, he has an eye patch. So basically, Ajani...
He becomes Nick Fury.
Yeah. What winds up happening is that Ajani is told by the Gatewatch, we're going to go fight Nicol Bolas right now. Since Tezzeret just got the planar bridge, we need to go there and stop him as it is. And Johnny's like, hold on.
That's a bad idea.
That's a terrible idea, because I fought Nicol Bolas. Only reason I could defeat him was because I had soul power. And I was able to, like, just channel Nicol Bolas' soul. I was in the Maelstrom, so I had a whole bunch of extra mana.
And they're just like, none of those words make sense. We'll see you later.
Yeah, basically, like, Ajani had the ability to, like, defeat Nicol Bolas because he got, like, a huge Super Saiyan boost in that exact moment. This is not going to end well. And so Ajani tells him, don't go. A lot of people are going to die if they go. They go anyways, and a lot of people die. Ajani, meanwhile, left to try and find more Planeswalkers to join the cause and fight against Nicol Bolas. Which is why, once they returned and the War of the Spark happened, so many Planeswalkers were already on the same page and had already been connected with each other. Because Ajani...
That was because of Ajani?
He did the legwork to make sure that everyone was generally aware that Nicol Bolas was a threat.
Just like, well, I'm glad we could all unite.
Yeah.
Johnny's like, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty good. And so the whole thing with War of the Spark happens. Ajani's basically incredible, starts smashing through a whole bunch of stuff, and then we have what happens with him meeting Elspeth. Now, we do know that Ajani's next course of action is that he wants to stop the Phyrexians. So that's why he's working very closely with Karn and Teferi on Dominaria during the story of Dominaria United. Just now, we've gone through the entirety of Ajani's storyline.
Spark Notes.
With Spark Notes, essentially. This has been Legendary Lore. This is what Legendary Lore was always meant to be. And now that I've finally covered Ajani, I believe that I can die happy.
We're shutting down the channel, guys, so make sure you leave a like on the video because it's our last video.
That's right.
We'll see you guys never.
It would have to be something horrendously horrific happening to Ajani for me to continue doing what we are doing right now.
Well,
but that's not going to happen.
Bye, guys.
I'm sure.